Timothy, and I'm moderating this amazing panel, just kind of looking at show running the web. Is it like TV, but way cheaper, or how do we make it work? I have a series that I've been working on that used to be called Dads, and it's now called Parked. I'd like to introduce Geoff Lapaire. Geoff has got there you go. He's got an amazing series called Space Janitors. Do you want to introduce?
Sure, yeah. I started in 2004 making web series with a show called Pure Ownage about video games and internet culture. That later turned into a television series for Showcase in Canada. It was canceled after one season, after 8 episodes, so moved on to the web again, Space Janitors. And that's a show, sort of sci-fi, geek culture, comedy. And it's about the guys that clean up on the Death Star. Or not the Death Star, a Death Star-like space station, sorry.
There you go, just to keep it clear. And to our further left is the lovely Erica Oyama.
Hello, thank you.
And your series is Burning Love.
Yeah, it's called Burning Love, and it was originally produced for Yahoo, and then after it came out on Yahoo, it went to E! Network. I don't know if that's here also in Canada, but yeah, it was online and then went to TV, and we have 2 more seasons coming out in the fall that will go to E! Also.
And you're based out of?
Based out of Los Angeles, went to school there, got a screenwriting degree actually, and then worked in production, and then worked for, my first big writing job was working on the Adult Swim series Children's Hospital, which also started as a web series. And I've written for a few other Adult Swim shows, but yeah, this was sort of the first big thing of mine to come out.
Awesome. And Geoff, you're based out of?
Toronto.
Just the center of Canada, unfortunately. How many people are familiar with Space Janitors? Okay, great. And with Burning Love? Okay, good. It's always good to have an idea of who your audience is and if they're familiar with your content. So did you want to set up a first piece?
This season on Burning Love. Mark Orlando is used to feeling the heat of fire, but now he's looking for someone to ignite the flames of love.
I know I have a lot to give to a partner. I just want someone to give it to. Every night, and in the morning, and sometimes in the shower.
What's up, ladies?
We connected on so many levels.
M for Mark. No!
The ladies are going to send the first lady home.
We're trying to heal the breach in our inner security system.
My baby!
No, Jay, wait, it's just a baby!
Is this for real? Is this happening?
This interview is over. This is so unfair to me.
Mark.
Can I get it? What? Can I get an amen?
I'm just looking to park my heart somewhere, preferably somewhere with running water.
Do you really think that you're going to be ready to propose?
I think Mark's going to make it through this.
To true love.
And so for clarity, you had season 1, season 2, and now you have 2 more seasons that are about to be rolled out?
No, sorry, we had season 1 came out last year, and then seasons 2 and 3 each came out in the summer of, no, season 1 came out 2 years ago. Season 1 went to E! This past year, and then this past spring, no, in February, sorry, I'm so confused. February of last year, seasons 2 and 3 rolled out on Yahoo,
Okay.
and they will premiere on E! In the fall.
Okay.
Sorry, I have 2 kids.
Well, that and what I think is really fascinating is often when we're creating web series, we have kind of a dual strategy that's happening. You kind of have this web strategy, and then you also kind of have the seeking out that kind of holy grail of broadcast as well. And so I know there can be a challenge in regards to, okay, where am I on season 1, season 2, and what's airing where? And especially because you've been on various platforms, it's hard to keep track.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
And not most people realize that there is kind of a dual strategy that happens when you're working parallel tracks. And it's like you're in the moment, and then at the same time you're working ahead and trying to stitch things together accordingly.
Right.
Now for you, you have season 1 is completed and great.
Yeah, season 1 we originally launched on escapistmagazine.com, which was a sort of gamer geek variety, a magazine website. And in season 2 we moved over to Felicia Day's Geek and Sundry YouTube channel, which is part of the YouTube premium content initiative. And we re-released or remastered season 1 and then launched season 2 on Geek and Sundry. Season 3 is still in the works. We're working on financing still, but things are looking promising. We're talking to brands, finding every which way to get money, which is what a producer does most of the time. But.
And do you find you have a moral compass in regards to your brands?
Well, I don't know. We're talking to some brands now. I can't mention which, but I don't think there's any sort of political issues with any of their products. I don't know.
You know, we're trying to close financing right now, and we've had a brand come to us, and normally I would be completely morally opposed to it, but I'm so, like, we have 10 days to close financing, so I'm like, yeah, sure, that would be great, and I'll have another child and name it after you, whatever it takes. It's really interesting how, when you get closer and closer to these deadlines, your moral compass on certain things might shift and might not, and I'm always curious as to where people stand.
So when is PokerStars.net due? Is that, I don't know.
Easy.
Is it?
Did you want to show your piece now?
Sure, I'll show my show. Let's just move on.
Right along.
All right. So I'll just talk a little bit about the show so you understand the context of the clip I'm about to play here. So this is Mike and Darby. They're a couple of janitors on a Death Star-like space station. They work for the evil Empire. But like most empires, you know, they don't know that they're evil, or they don't really think about things too much, and they're just in a society that values order and power above all else, and they don't mind blowing up planets or, you know, cleaning up the floors that people walk on that blow up the planets. But in any case, Mike, the guy on the left, is very happy with his job. He's happy-go-lucky. He's fine with the way things are. But Darby, on the other hand, he wants to be somebody. He thinks he can be running the space station. So throughout season 1, he tries to advance his career in various ways and fails. But he does find out in the plot twist in the season arc that he is actually someone very important. He's a long-lost son of a rebel leader. Problem is they hate the rebels. So at the end of season 1, the rebels attack. And something that we sort of design our show around is the fact that in scripted web series there tends to be a viewership decline as your episodes go on. I'm not sure if you've experienced this phenomenon, but episode 1 of season 1 will most likely be your most viewed episode of all time. So we try to pack it really dense and have exciting, funny stuff happen in the beginning. So we're thinking about this for the opening clip of our second season, which I'm about to show you.
So she's gulping down the second most expensive bottle of wine on the menu, which is annoying because I know she can't taste it. It's just going straight to her waste receptacle. Uh-huh. And then she dumps me because, get this, she says she doesn't think that she could be with someone from maintenance.
Oh, I guess that's why she wanted you to get that promotion so bad.
Yeah. It will happen. Eventually. She's just impatient, which is strange because it's not like she's getting any older.
Look, I'm not really the go-to guy for dating advice, especially with android women. Now, if you want to talk probe droids...
I don't. Mike, you're not seeing the big picture. It's not about my relationship with Elle. It's about my career.
Career? How many officers you know started out as a janitor?
All I need is one supervisor with some imagination. Or we get a little FaceTime with Dark Lord himself.
Oh, yeah, like Dark Lord even knows we exist.
He would know we exist if we could just get in there and show him all these cool ideas I have.
Control, this is Mike Chet. We have 2 Squall Troopers ready for Soylent. Deck 1, Section 12.
So I'd like to spend another couple minutes just talking about the series and the way that we produce it. And you know, our goal was to have this big comedic space opera, but we obviously don't have a lot of money since we're on the web. So we sort of designed the show around something that we could produce that feels big but isn't actually all that expensive. So my co-producer Devin Langell does a lot of the visual effects, so we can rely on that sort of crutch in this sort of producer's time investment that doesn't cost us anything but our time. So let me just show you a few stills from production. This is our space station. It's huge. It has 10,000 people living on it. And we've got to figure out a way to make that big on a low budget. So this is our hallway that you saw in the sequence I just showed you. So we have a hybrid sort of real sets and fake sets. So it's obvious here when you see the green what's real and what's fake. The other thing is that there's actually only 3 windows in this hallway. But in the show, there's 5. So we do what's called a French reverse, and we have all these tricks where you're placing the camera and blocking the actors so that it actually seems like there's 5 windows in the show. Here's another shot of our hallway, and you can see we sort of have a modular set. We play Lego. We can take different pieces of the ship's walls and replace them and put different lighting gels in and make it feel different. So we do that throughout the show to make it seem like we're in different environments when we're actually block shooting in the same set. So we shoot out 2 days for all the hallway and hallway type sets. Here's what it looks like in the show. We can put different planets, different ships outside. Here's the French reverse. It's actually, 5 windows. There's people walking by in the background, makes it feel big. Sometimes you're near a wormhole. There's some different view outside. And of course, when the wormhole comes around, then sometimes you run into your evil twin from another dimension. Again, these green screen hallway extensions, we can make them feel different sections of the ship by putting stuff in there. This is digital stuff in the background and different kinds of lighting that we use, and different set dressing. You see a bit of set dressing in this shot. And there's the reverse, some more set dressing again. We've got some lights on the set from the wormhole. Here's the exact same set, except the hallway doesn't extend, and it looks down into the hangar bay. And there's a bit more set dressing, so we can kind of have all these different locations in the ship, making it feel big when it's actually not costing you a lot in sets. Here's another example, a different kind of planet. That green panel is now an actual panel with some information being displayed on it, and then, of course, some more set decoration. Here's another shot of people in the line for the holodeck. It's the exact same set, but it makes it feel different by putting a little bit of set dressing. And then, of course, playing with Lego with our sets, you put a little door in there that we also have. Here's another setup that we shoot in. It's the cafeteria. So on the ship, this is what it looks like when we're shooting. This is what it looks like with actors in it. And then this is what it looks like in the show. So we kind of clone our setup on our tables and have stock footage of people walking around in the background to make it feel big. Here's the reverse of the cafeteria. You might recognize this door from the hallway. Well, we're reusing it for the cafeteria. So in the fiction of the show, it's a very bland, repetitive set, and because that's the way the Empire is. They all eat mush. You can see some mush on the table. It's a sterile existence, but they love it because they're all loyal to the Emperor. This is, again, using the same flattage with different set deck for the quarters where the crew people live. Here's another poker room. With the same kind of flattage, just lit in a different way. Here's the reverse, put some gels on the lights. Hey, it feels different. So we get the sense of a massive ship by using exteriors and ships flying by. It's a big world, and we're not spending a lot of money on sets. Sometimes there are no sets. This is an example. They're on the desert planet, escaping from that episode, the clip I just showed you. And this is footage of the Arizona desert. Sometimes they're in a Tron-like simulation, and there's actually no physical set. It's all just green screen. This is also all just green screen, and this is another way to make it feel big. You have clones in your show. So this is Scott Yamamura. He plays our clone trooper, and there's a lot of him on the ship, running around in the background all the time. This is another sort of hybrid set, the green screen with some real rocks and some real sticks for fire and whatever else in an alien cave planet. This is my backyard. We actually shoot 9 days in studio, but sometimes we have location. We do 1 day on location for a particular scene. This is when they got captured by the Ewok-like creatures. Didn't go so well, the invasion. And then this is the clone retirement planet. This is actually a day we did on the beach, just shooting a couple actors and clone them up and make it feel big. And again, doing things on the cheap with web series on low budget. This was crowdsourced, this VFX. So a fan did this for us and made these amazing retirement clone hotels. Anyway, that gives you a scope of our production and what the show's about.
Now, Erica, your show is much differently put together. Are you able to speak to that in some regards? I mean, obviously not specifics, but I think it'd be interesting to see how it's stitched together. It's a very different model.
It was a different model because we were supported by a studio, studio. the way this all came about is I wrote a short based on sort of the finale episode of a Bachelor type show with our main character. And after writing it, we were just like, oh, we'll just do this as an internet short, and then realized, oh, there's a whole world of this show that we could explore with all these funny people that we know. And after I wrote that, we kind of turned it into a pitch document and worked with our good friend John Stern, who has a production company called Abominable. And they do a lot of short format web series and series for Cartoon Network's Adult Swim. Children's Hospital being one of those. And then the next company to come on board was Red Hour, which is Ben Stiller's company.
Yeah.
And they have a digital arm. And they have a deal with Paramount Studios, who is Insurge, Paramount Insurge. And so we shot what's called the sizzle reel, which is just we shot for a day at our manager's house, and we had all these actors come and sort of giving like a feel for what the web series would be.
And you did that with private investment?
We did that. I believe Paramount supported that day of shooting.
Yeah.
But it was a super low budget. Everybody just showed up and brought their own clothes and did everything. And so we did that, and about a year later, it came, we got our funding from Yahoo, who was interested in doing more comedy web series. So after that, we were able to write the whole season, and we kept basically all of our cast from the sizzle reel, which was great because we
that doesn't always happen.
Had a while to think about the characters, and really like a lot of things came out of that one day of shooting that gave us ideas for the whole season. So yeah, then we actually kind of over-delivered material. They were, you know, just as a function of like the story we wanted to tell. We had more episodes than we planned on doing, but we shot the entire season in 9 days.
Okay.
And there were 14 episodes. So it's about 2 hours, 2.5? 8 days. with a half a day in New York to shoot Ben Stiller's cameo.
Right.
Who's a very supportive executive producer to agree to be in the show. So yeah, it was very, very fast-paced and called in all the favors we could. So yeah.
And what did you shoot on? What camera? Do you know?
I think it was red.
And
a red camera?
The red, yeah, the red.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'm always curious. And for you, what did you shoot on?
Season 1 we did on 2 5D Mark IIs,
Yep.
the Canons, and then season 2 we went with the red Scarlet
Okay.
because we had access.
More
to
bells
one.
and whistles.
Yeah.
And did you have a sizzle to pitch? Like, was that one of your assets to put into your independent production fund application?
No, we didn't pre-shoot anything. 'Cause just because of the nature of the project, you need the sets. You
Of
need
course.
the costumes. You know, there's no sense in putting people in their street clothes in your apartment. you
Yeah.
know. So.
We have a fund here through Creative BC that's called the Interactive Fund that you can often use to try and help you create that sizzle reel and that pitch and that branding of your shows. So it's almost what I like to consider pre-development. A lot of people aren't even aware of it. It's $50,000 and it's non-recoupable. So it's a great little asset for producers to go after to try and get that sizzle reel together so that they can then go to market and try and get a package together. 'Cause there's always different ways. Every show has its own kind of model in regards to how it happens, right? So it's just nice to let people know about different territories and how they have different different funds available to them.
That's great.
Yeah. So for you, because they're both spoofs, which is one of the things that I find quite interesting, what for you as creators wanted you to do this kind of work with working with a spoof?
Well, I was just a huge fan of The Bachelor, like genuinely. And as I was watching it, I was like, this obviously is ridiculous, but I still want to watch every week and am invested in what happens. So again, just had my first kid and was just like needing something mindless to focus on. And so yeah, it just came from years of watching it and sort of observing things about it that would, and meeting other people, actors and things who were like also in that same boat who we all wanted to do this together. Yeah.
I mean, it's hilarious. And you were able to bring in, especially for your second season, a lot of well-known talent.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, my husband's been an actor for a long time, and we've been a long time. He's been around for a while. No, but we just, you know, we live in LA. We have, like, most of our friends are in the industry, and have worked on different projects with them and just sort of shot for the moon in terms of casting, and we're lucky that so many people wanted to do something sort of low budget and down and dirty and just fun.
And so you're dealing with SAG. How did that go?
I specifically didn't have to coordinate any of that, but I think it went well. The only problem we ran into was if somebody was on a TV series, we could only use them for a specific number of episodes, or like negotiating people with series regular contracts, they could only be in like a couple of our episodes.
Right.
So we had to do some finagling.
And for you?
So we worked with Actra Talent.
Excuse me.
And Actra was very accommodating. I've been working with them for a number of years on sort of developing digital media policies, because right now the agreements that they have with the CMPA are not conducive at all to online web. Everything is still per episode, but now you got to pay somebody the daily minimum per episode is one of the criteria. But of course, if your episodes are 3 minutes and you have 30 of them, it doesn't work, and it's immediately enabled. There's a whole list of complications like that. But the short version of the story is that Actra wants to accommodate. They want their membership working on web series, and they'll figure something out. It's just a matter of picking up the phone and calling a steward.
And who was that steward for you?
Barbara LaRose is the person that I've been dealing with on my projects, and she's really good. She's really understanding.
How many people in the audience are doing web series right now or trying to get one done? And do you have a steward? Are you dealing with the union? No? Okay. In BC and Vancouver, Leslie Brady is really fantastic, and I really encourage you to be open and transparent with her from like day one. They're very available to you, like just ask a lot of questions, and they want to work with you. They want their members to be working, and they understand that there's a gap right now in between new media and low budget and trying to find a way to make it work. They had a conference a couple months ago where they were actually actively meeting with membership across the country, and they're really analyzing how they can make their membership more readily available to create their own work. So I think it's important that we're quite vocal with our unions so that we can leverage them accordingly to create real quality work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you have, say, $4,000 for your web series or whatever, and you want to work with Actra Talent, it's still worth the phone call, even if there's not a lot of money involved with them. I know that sometimes actors get annoyed at the union for getting in the way of things like this, but I can tell you that the people I've dealt with, they're trying to find a solution, but it's a very difficult problem. It's not like they can just wave their magic wand and make some changes to these agreements, and then there's great web policies, and everyone's working on the web and on TV, and everyone's happy. It's a big challenge.
It is. I mean, when we went into the union, it was a specific time when we went in. There's been a 95% unemployment rate here right now because our tax credits are not aggressive enough compared to other places in the country, and so we went in and we were trying to kind of negotiate with them to do a hybrid of agreements just to try and find a way to make it work. Because otherwise I was like, well, we have a union cast. Like, who do you want us to cut? Your choice. Okay, we'll work with you. Mm-hmm. We have a question up here.
Just a quick question. So
just wait for the microphone.
Do you have a mix of union and non-union actors? I'm specifically wondering about Geoff because it's Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the policies right now require that you, if you mix union and non-union, you have to pay what's called a permit fee. So I think it's, for an actor, it's $260 goes to Actra, and then you can use a non-union person. And that's good for a week's worth of work from that non-union person. But of course, all those rates are negotiable. But the idea behind it is that they want you to encourage the use of union actors. So it's sort of a penalty.
And when you were doing that, do you have that penalty or that permit come from their wage? Like, is that their responsibility?
That's a good question.
Or is it production's responsibility? It's an interesting bargaining tool.
Actra will tell you it comes out of the non-union actor's pocket, but really it comes from the budget at the end of the day. And
of course.
You're obviously negotiating separately with a non-union actor.
And when you're negotiating that with the union, were they able to use that as a point towards getting into the union?
No,
okay.
There was no points on our web series. I'm not sure. I didn't deal with that issue, and I'm not sure what the logic is behind what projects can give points towards membership and what can't.
Okay. And when you were creating Erica, was it was web first? You were like, this is the way we're going to go. We're going to have fun with this. And so then having network come and pick it up, how did that work with your team?
Well, we had, in our friend's show, Children's Hospital, which we've both worked on, it started as a web series, and then it took a long time. The negotiations went on for a long time, and then it eventually went to Adult Swim. So we knew that that was like a dream come true scenario. So as we were producing our show, we hoped in the back of our minds it would go to Adult Swim or something like that. And then as the show came out, we were surprised when E! came along and offered a spot on their network, and it was just a great place for it since it's so pop culture
Most definitely.
based. So.
I have a question.
Please.
Hi.
Oh, sure.
So a lot of web series creators are sort of purist web series people that say, I want to do my art, man. I want to have control. I want to do something for the web. But I'm in the other camp of like, I'm doing web series because I'm doing it as a demo for television. And I want to, either pitch this show, do a proof of concept on the web, or pitch a similar comedy or whatever else and retool it for television. So what was the intention behind your project? Was it like, okay, we're going to make this as a demo for television?
It wasn't really a demo for television. We weren't thinking we would make it for the web and then remake it for TV. But for me, it was sort of a calling card. It was for the love of the project, first of all, but then I hoped that, because I wrote the whole series, that it would open other doors and other, meetings to pitch other different TV shows or movies.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel that you sometimes work with the stigma? I mean, I get it all the time. I look at like a series as a series. Like I have arguments all the time with people. I'm like, House of Cards is a web series. And no, it's not. How dare you say that? And I'm like, well, series is a series is a series. It's whatever platform. And I think at one point there was almost this connotation that a web series was like the dirty, poor relation, whereas now it's like, I think Netflix has done a lot in regards to upping the standard of what one considers a web series. I mean, House of Cards is more expensive than most network television, right? So I'm just curious, for you, I mean, how do you feel about it with this kind of stigma around web series?
I might sort of be more focused on, less on the platform and more on the art form.
Most definitely, yeah.
So, the way I think about web series is, it's the same difference between television and film. It's a different art form. There's different styles, like the sitcom, the hour-long drama. There's a reason why comedies are half hour and that dramas are usually an hour. And so there's these types of shows that have evolved to be the successful art form that works on TV. There's a successful structure that works in a film that you watch in a theater, which makes it a different art form. But with the web series, it's the Wild West, and everyone's trying different things, and some of it looks like TV, some of it doesn't look like TV at all.
And then there's a hybrid of the two.
It's just a mashup. It's overlapping. So I might actually disagree with you. I might argue that House of Cards is more of a TV show just because of its art form, because of its story structure, because of the style in which it's shot and written. But yeah, I think we have yet to discover, or maybe we have discovered, sort of the sitcom of the internet.
Right.
The format that is going to be the typical web series comedy, and then maybe there'll be a typical web series drama, and it might be 8 minutes long, or it might be longer. I don't know. Everyone's trying different things, and there's such a huge difference in all the projects that I'm seeing come out on the web that it's not really coming together as one sort of art form. It's kind of still going out.
Very stagnant, and we're sort of staggered in that regards. And so do you have, with your format, your episodes are how long?
They're about 8 minutes on average.
Okay.
And it's small enough amount of time that you can stick to just an A story, or you can have an A and B story. There's the beginning, middle, and end. We get pretty far from the beginning. We sort of have the way we structure it is we have the introduction to the show be its own story. So a little scene that's maybe 60 seconds long or whatever, that is sort of its own story that could be cut separately and understood as its own thing. So, and then you hit them with the intro sequence that's really short, and then you get into the main plot that you were spun into from this first thing that you saw. So that's how we kind of structure Space Janitors, and I see some other web series doing a similar kind of thing. But it is similar to it's like a sort of a shorter version of a 22-minute comedy.
It's condensed, most definitely. And for you, Erica, your your episodes are approximately how long?
In season 1, they hovered between 7.5 to 11, 12 minutes.
Right.
And it was funny because I do think web series have come a long way
Almost
in terms
definitely.
of legitimacy, and I felt like early on I would say web series and people, it was like kind of eye rolly, and but now it's people are really taking it seriously, and there's a lot of funding behind some of them. But when I was writing it, I kept hearing people say, "Oh, well, people won't pay attention to something that's longer than 5 minutes," and so I was like freaked out because we have a huge cast and sort of a format that doesn't really work in 5 minutes. So they were shorter the first season, and then when it went to E, we had to sort of go back in and add more material because the episodes weren't long enough. So once we did the second and third seasons, we just took our time. We built each episode so that it would sort of fit together in the event that it was also picked up for E. And we found that people stuck with it and didn't feel like it was too long to invest in an episode.
Well, I think as people are getting more and more accustomed to getting their content on web, we're kind of training them in many regards to, at the beginning it was like nothing longer than 2 minutes and nothing longer than 4 minutes.
Right.
And it just seems that longevity is happening to be more and more as we go, as the form's evolving, I guess.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. The whole short form content is what works on the web. Long form content does not work. And I think it has less to do with the runtime and more to do with the fact that another way when we think about when we're writing the show and producing it is you're fighting the close window button.
Yeah.
You're constantly, it's a lean forward experience, and there's Twitter, there's your email, there's Facebook, there's a lot of other exciting things to do. You can check Reddit again in the middle of the show or whatever. But you're constantly, you're not relaxed on a couch with a remote, or you're not in a theater with. So the experience is different in that you can immediately lose someone's attention, and you're always fighting them closing the window, and that's the way we think about it.
And it's interesting that you say close the window. I mean, one of the things that we did, and a question I'd love to ask is, do you let your analytics inform your creative? Like, one of the things that we've been doing is really analyzing our back end and realizing that the majority of our viewers are watching actually on mobile devices, be it the iPad or the iPhone. So it's not even a closed window. You're competing with people who are like tweeting or retweeting, and they've got Facebook status updates that are coming up or whatever updates are happening on their phone, which can definitely impede the creative that you're putting forth. So do you look at when you're creating your work that it's like, okay, this is for somebody sitting there on their laptop, or are you thinking about the different devices and where they might be consuming your content?
I don't think I really thought in those terms. We just tried to make it as funny as, we tried to make it something that we loved, and and just tried to take it as seriously as, even though it was a web series and it was lower budget, it's just like everybody was very committed.
Great. And did you let your analytics inform your creative? Like, did you study and see, okay, we have more female viewers than male, and they're at this age or that age, and really know your demographic to, in between seasons, to kind of have it inform your creative, or no?
Not really, I don't think. Just,
I wouldn't know how to make a show for a phone versus make a show for a laptop. I think other than the photography and the amount of the screen size, you keep that in mind. But I think it's more, I think creatively I'm always sort of driven with the show I want to see or the show I want to make. I don't really look at the demographics and then shift. We might look at the comments and the feedback and see what characters resonate and what types of stories resonate. But of course, you have to always take that with a grain of salt.
Right.
Most definitely.
You can't let the fans write your show.
Oh my gosh, just to speak on comments for a moment. So our series parodies a reality show, and it's on Yahoo, and we just told them very early on, we don't want the advertising to seem jokey at all. We want it to feel very sincere, and so they would put it on the front page of Yahoo with, like, this man is looking for love, and it would be a picture of Ken doing something ridiculous. And so the comments that you find on all of our episodes, a lot of them think that it's a real show, and even though they're recognizable actors in the show, like Jennifer Aniston, for example, is in the second episode, like in a bear suit and takes off her head, and they're like, that girl looks a lot like Jennifer Aniston. Because they're like angry at how, and they would always talk about how stupid Ken was. It's like, this idiot, all these girls are so nice, and it was just like so funny to watch people fight with each other in the comment section. Some people be like, this is a fake, these are actors. Like, these people seem like actors.
Because
they are.
They're not getting that it's a spoof.
So that was entertaining for us.
Most definitely. And how do you feel about, you're watching your husband in all these wonderfully compromised situations?
Right. It was...
what you signed up for?
You're writing it.
Yeah, it sort of helped me get over any feelings I had about him in those situations.
Yeah.
Early on when we were dating, he'd have to do love scenes or whatever, freak out. And now I was like, all right, make out with her, and then go over there, and then
come home and take care of the kids.
And then put them to bed, and I'm going out.
Basically.
No, that was fine.
And so, what is your creative like? Do you break stories like a writer's room, or is it just yourself working independently? What's your format like? How does it happen for you?
After the sizzle reel we shot a while ago, we had all the actors come in and we had a round table. But then I came up, so a lot of great ideas came from some of the actors. But yeah, I outlined by myself and sort of sent it out to our producers, and it was all very natural and organic, and there was quite a bit of improv, and so it was a very collaborative experience, even though I was the only writer on the show.
And because you say you're the only writer on the show, do you find that you're working somewhat in a vacuum when you're coming up with your stories, or you're like, okay, the actors will fill in and flesh it out when you're in the improv component, or?
Well, everything was very carefully mapped out.
Okay. So
I felt like that was it was the best way for me to do this show, because it was just easier that way. But then the actors would come in and it would just go in weird directions and enhance it even more.
Right. And so, because you're predominantly as a writer, are you thinking with the dollars in the back of your mind, like character count? No, maybe I can't bring that character back, or does that affect your creative, or do you just let the producers deal with it? Like, I want this character, go find the money?
Well, it was more in terms of locations.
Yes.
So, the first season we were like Santa Monica Pier, and that turned into a playground for adults. But so yeah, that was sort of the biggest thing. But that just led to more creative ways to be ridiculous in this show. Yeah.
Awesome.
I find a lot of times compromising ends up with a better product.
Yeah.
If you had a full, expensive TV show budget, you would have shot at that first location instead of twisting it around and figuring out a creative way. We've done a lot of that too, and it's like, oh, the hallway day is too full, Geoff. Can this scene be here, or can we do something else? And it's, it works in the end. Creative people find ways. So.
And who's in do you have a writer's room? Who's?
Yes, so my co-producer Davin Langell is also a story editor, and then Andy Hull is the other writer, so he and I write the show together. And we break down the stories, we got our cue cards, and we figure it out, and then oftentimes we work on an iconic science fiction scene. So we think about, okay, what happens after the two guides that got mind tricked, and that these aren't the droids you're looking for. What happens after Luke and Obi-Wan leave? Are they talking to each other? Are they confused about it? But they really look like the droids, So we do scenes based on that kind of stuff, and we spoof famous, iconic science fiction scenes, and sort of do what below decks what happens, and then sometimes a story rolls out from that. So yeah, iconic scenes is often a starting point, but also we know what our characters are. We know what points we want to make. We know where we want to take them. We know all their arcs, and then we write around that. So for instance, one of our staunch supporters of the Empire starts to learn more about the Rebels and starts to doubt the Empire. So that's the story arc. And we had some key scenes throughout season 1 that established that.
And with your cast, because Erica just explained that she was working within her community of friends, how did your cast come about?
So most of them, we did 10 days of casting. We did casting calls in Toronto, and most of them ended up being people that we know from the comedy scene. So sketch performers, stand-up performers, people that were familiar with their work, and then but we auditioned out everybody that we could get our hands on. And yeah, they're great performers. A lot of them are improvisers, which really helps too. As a rule, we would, at the end of the scene, we'd just let the camera roll, because oftentimes there'd be a new ending to the scene that would be improvised, and it was great, and it was the funniest part of the whole scene oftentimes. So, but yeah, working with veteran comedians and improvisers is fantastic for a comedy series.
Almost definitely. And then one thing I find that's also fascinating is the actual seeding of the series and where you roll them out and how you roll them out. Do you have somebody within your team working as a digital strategist and a community manager doing that for you?
Yes, we have someone managing our Twitter and our Facebook and all that, but I don't think we came up with any special tricks to promote the show or anything like that. It was pretty vanilla social media. We did spend a lot of time thinking about it, but it's a difficult thing to have, something shareable or something people are going to talk about or that must share piece of content or image or whatever. I think I'm not sure if did you have any strategies like that? Because I think the whole is it real or is it not could have been a good angle. Like people think it's real there.
Right. Well, since we were with Yahoo, they sort of dictated the. Yeah, and we trusted them because we really didn't have an opinion too strong away. I think it was the first season. The first 3 episodes came out, and then it was twice a week, Monday and Thursday, a new episode would come out. And then the final 2 came out together, I believe. And then for seasons 2 and 3, though, season 2 followed that model, but then season 3, it was like our competition show. So season 2 was a female bachelorette with all guys, and then season 3 was half guys, girls competing for a grand prize of $900.
Okay.
So I don't know, since it was kind of like a ridiculous mix of the shows, it was one every day.
Wow.
And so it was for those binge watching. I'm not sure what worked the best or really.
So then how many episodes in your season?
There were 14.
14,
for each.
okay.
Yeah.
And for you?
We did 8 episodes per season, so a total of 16 so far.
Okay. You mentioned Reddit.
Yes.
How are you using Reddit?
Well, actually, Reddit is something you can't really control. You submit, you try,
You wait 9 minutes before you can submit anything else. It's
very
finicky
there are people that I know that have 16 different accounts, and they log in, log out, and upvote their own stuff, and they're gaming the system. Reddit's constantly trying to battle that, and it's against the terms of service. But yeah, like I said, we'd submit our links to Reddit, r/Star Wars. But yeah, we didn't get any front page traffic, unfortunately.
I did, and it was a fluke. I don't even know how it happened. Yeah.
So what did you submit to Reddit?
I don't. There was one night we had a release schedule, and we'd kept everything private because it was originally a sizzle reel. It wasn't supposed to ever be for public consumption. And then I went, it was really late. I was supposed to roll something out on the morning, and my son had been sick, so I just did it quickly late at night when I knew it would be quiet. And I just cracked it all open, and I really hashtagged it properly, and I let it go. And I woke up in the morning, and my phone was hot to touch, and we went from 150 views to 100,000 views overnight. Wow. It's oh my God. And it was through Reddit. We made the front page, and they were up all night arguing and debating our show, because our show's highly debatable in regards to are they good dads or bad dads? So it was a fluke, and now I'm how did we make that happen?
It's hard to design success like that. It just happens sometimes.
In some regards. I think the content was fodder for a lot of discussion, but it wasn't an intentional seeding. In regards to hashtagging it, meta tagging it, make sure it was all going to the right place, but it was the fact that people globbed onto it that was a fluke in many regards. Have you played with Reddit at all?
I haven't.
It's an awkward platform.
The most social media we did was create a Twitter for Mark Orlando, or Ken in the show.
Yeah.
And he would just talk about his day and where he's going. He's going to the gym, the post office. It was just stupid things that he had to say. And then he would promote the show.
And were you doing that yourself, or did you hire someone to do that for you?
We did it.
Eric wrote most of it.
There you go.
Throw in a couple here and there.
Yeah.
And an Instagram of him just at the post office or whatever.
That's awesome. So out of all the platforms, which do you enjoy playing with?
Twitter was fun just because it was dumb jokes from that character.
Right.
Just thinking about the minutia of his life.
The microblogging.
I don't know how successful it was to drawing people in, but.
Right. And for you?
I think we mostly focused on Facebook, just because that's how we get into people's lives and reach them and try to pull them to our show. So I think we're up to 700 likes, which is okay. But it's not. There's a lot of web series that have more.
Well, and Facebook's changed so dramatically in the last 4 months, so it's really hard to get anything through the blocks. I mean, it's very much a bifurcated platform now where you've got the professional side and the personal side, and the two barely intermix unless you're going to put some cheddar down.
And it's kind of a bad strategy to focus on one social media platform too much, because if they change one policy, like there was a publisher that had his blog and he had 1 million people following on Facebook, and then he would post to Facebook, and then you get a bunch of traffic on his website, and then one day Facebook just changed their policy. It used to be when you liked something, you were a fan of something, you for sure got their update. They changed it so it goes to 10% of the people only. And oh, by the way, you can pay to promote your post. And that pretty much destroyed his business. And
You have to pay for your edge rank now.
yeah, now we have to pay for what they used to give us for free, which is, Facebook can do whatever they want. There's always Google Plus. If you don't like it, but yeah, it's unfortunate for content creators. I think that's that policy.
And it's been quite dramatic in the last little while. We've got a question here.
What have you learned about breaking stories for 8-minute episodes, like the kinds of premises that work well, or?
Well, we keep it really tight. So if there's any words that don't have to be there, have to go. That the standard rule of starting the scene as late as you can. Have every line mean 2 or 3 different things if you can, or say 2 or 3 different things about the universe that we're building, about the characters, about the relationships, and about the plot that's going on. If every line says something about that, you're writing really dense. So we've really tried to focus on that kind of a style. And I find that we've constructed some satisfying stories that happen in 8 or 10 minutes. Yeah, I think we pull it off, and that's what we've tried to do. But I think you do sacrifice a lot of character development. So our characters might seem a bit thin, and you certainly have to cut it really tight. So it might seem a bit fast-paced compared to television.
Yeah, same. I think just in our show, everyone had a very clear character and purpose and attitude towards being there, and so it was just the quick pops of all the setup scenes that in TV shows might take 3 to 5 minutes were 90 seconds or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you got what you needed to get and move on.
There's
we
no
have the
time for lingering.
testimonials, and it's just very fast. Yeah.
And did you do a lot of behind the scenes?
Yeah, we have some blooper reels, and we did some behind the scenes content. We actually did interstitial content. So our actors would respond to YouTube comments. So they'd comment on the comments, and we do that because we staggered our release. A new episode came out every 2 weeks, just because of our post-production schedule. We had a lot to do. So every second week there would be actors commenting on the comments, or some blooper reel, or some behind the scenes. And of course we're always uploading behind the scenes photos on Facebook and keeping people in the production loop and showing them how we did things.
And so, that's a really important question for me to ask in regards to release schedule. You were doing every 2 weeks.
Yes.
You were at the point where you were almost doing every day for binging. When you were doing the 2 weeks and before you got into your every day, were there certain days? I know you originally said Monday and Thursday. Geoff, how about your team?
Our release schedule was dictated by Geek and Sundry, so they have their slate of shows.
Right.
So they released a different show every day, so I think we were Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think weekdays work. Like, they don't release content on the weekends. So it's people goof off at work, I suppose, is the lesson there.
Unless it's not safe for work viewing.
Yeah.
Which is where we get spanked.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm not sure what the optimal strategy is. I don't know if anybody is figuring this out. I know Netflix seems to be pretty confident that here it is.
Yeah, binge.
There's the whole thing. Seems to be the way to go, because they're thinking about the long term. They're thinking about a month from now or 6 months from now, it's all going to be there anyway. So might as well just put it out right away. I find that there's a lot more excitement about our show as we're releasing, and how are the numbers for you? So you tried different strategies. You tried 2 a week, and then you tried 1 a day. And was there a difference? Or
I don't know exactly, but I feel like the numbers were stronger in the beginning once it was 2 a week. But yeah, I guess there was something to be said about the hardcore fans who were like, every day there's a new one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
I mean, there's an analytic out there that's saying that after your pilot, 60% of your audience drops off and will never come back.
Right.
Which is pretty daunting. You're like, oh God, just like barely out the gate and you're gone. So I'm always curious in regards to, I think every property will have its own release strategy, but I'm always curious to see what people are playing with and what's working for them or not. You have other questions?
Yeah, just on that that topic, when you said 60% just drop off, and kind of having that understanding that when you're writing this show, it's going to be 12 episodes or 8 or whatever. After your first one, you say to the crew, like, okay, I know that this is going to hit it off at a peak, and then it's going to go down, but what's that sort of that strategy or that conversation to keep people involved in the second, third, fourth? I mean, it must be a little bit of a stress case, because you're kind of like, okay, we're going to show people, and people are going to be like, yeah, hardcore, and then afterwards it's kind of keeping them. So do you, I don't know, like, what's that thought process, for both of you, because...
Well, with Space Janitors, our first episode of season 1 is the most viewed episode. And we had a drop off, then we had a peak around episode 106, which was nice. It shows that there was some interest there. But so we designed the show, we have the 5-second rule. In the first 5 seconds, someone's got to laugh on a comedy, or there has to be some interest or something grabbing in the first 5 seconds of your video. You can't have establishing shots, you can't have an intro sequence if it's not entertaining or hilarious. So that was sort of our thinking in designing that show. And we actually also made the first episode shorter than the others, so it wasn't a big time investment, because we were worried about people coming to our show and saying, oh, I don't have 13 minutes, or I don't have 8 minutes, oh, but I have 3.5. So we made it a shorter episode. But I think that, I'm not sure if that's a good strategy, because a lot of people said, oh, what is this show? It's just a bunch of short clips, like I'm not interested, It wasn't until episode 2 they said, okay, here's the show. This is the show I was hoping for, when they saw episode 2. So that might have been a bad strategy in our first episode.
Yeah, just the kind of are you structuring it like a feature, in a sense where you're kind of you're hitting the certain beats as a complete project, saying, okay, I have 8 episodes and they're each 10 minutes long, and that's 80 minutes, so I need to structure my episodes just like a TV series, or are you actually just doing one whole where you're getting the beginning, middle, end, and no hook or whatnot? I think you're doing that in a sense with the...
There was sort of there was a definite arc to the season, and we hit those points. We wanted to keep interest throughout the whole season, so... but luckily I hadn't heard that statistic that most people don't come back for the second episode, so I wasn't that freaked out about it. But we felt like we just wanted to make every episode as funny as it could possibly be, and I think with those first 3, obviously people find weird stuff all over the internet and will watch it for 1 second and then move on. But for the people who were there to see a web series, to see a comedy play out, once they saw the first 3, they're like, okay, I get what this is, I'll come back and see it.
Yeah, Google also won't tell you, this is YouTube specific, it won't tell you what a view is. So I've asked Google, and they said, we don't want people gaming the system, so we won't tell them. Because I asked them, is it a play start? Is it they watch the first 5 seconds? Is it they watch the first 5%? What's a view? And they won't tell you. So it's hard to interpret what's going on when your first episode is the most viewed, because I don't know what that means, right? It could be they played the 5 seconds and then closed it and lost interest, or... so it's difficult to sort of look at your analytics in that regard. As to the art form, if we're structuring it like a movie or whatever, I'm structuring it like a web series. It's its own thing. It's sort of how I would approach, if I was on the internet and I found a series of short videos, what would I want to see in the stories? And so they are self-contained. You can jump in. You want someone to be able to jump in at episode 6 and then, know what's going on somewhat with the characters and have a good time watching the show. So it differs from a feature in that sense. But it is sort of an overall, like the season could be cut together as a feature. There would be weird it would have a weird feel with sort of the story structure, because there's these little self-contained stories that disappear. But it's somewhat it's its own thing. It's a new art form, I think.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question here. Sorry. Picking up on what he said, I'm wondering if part of the reason the conversation doesn't continue, and I don't mean this in any way as an insult, so don't take it as that, but because the web series I've seen, most of them contribute to the dumbing down of culture and appeal to the lowest common denominator. And I agree with you that Netflix, House of Cards is not a web series. It's a serious, well-written, well-acted TV series that happens to be on the web. And that if part of the reason is there's so much schlock out there, so much lowbrow stuff, the competition's so thick, once they've got the formula, which they can often find after that first or second episode, it gets repetitive and doesn't really lock an audience in. Like you take Breaking Bad, you never knew where those twists were going to go in that show. It was always unpredictable in terms of the writing, as opposed to a formula which is just, it's so repetitive or been done before that it just can't carry the conversation. So I ask this as a serious question, not as an insult, but I just haven't seen any web series that do that, but I'm not that well informed on it, and maybe people do have it. That's my theoretical point or question. Practical one, how do you monetize what you do?
Okay, so for clarification, what kinds of web series are you referring to, the ones that you've seen?
They're I couldn't tell you the title. They were forgettable. I would just surf around to look at the genre, and most of them were comedy. Comedies. I can't remember if I even found a serious one. There probably is some out there, but they were all pretty much, on the lowbrow type of comedies. But
so Burning Lemons.
Yes.
One reason might be, depending on what series you're talking about, the YouTube online audience is a very young demographic. So juvenile stuff does really well on YouTube, and it's just because there are young people watching it, and that's most of what YouTube is nowadays. The number one YouTube subscriber, or the number one subscribed to channel is PewDiePie, which is very, very juvenile content. He's right now the king of YouTube, and it's content for the younger demographics. It's not for the people in this room. So maybe that might have something to do with it. But I personally think there's the whole gamut of content on web series. I think people are trying everything.
Also, I think if you looked at TV ratings, probably a lot of people, the drop in ratings between the pilot of a new sitcom and the second episode, there's always a dip. It's more dramatic online where you can say exactly how many views or whatever. But yeah, I think there's like a high level of quality online now, and like we tried to do twists and turns and we found people became invested in our characters, as ridiculous as they were, and who was going to end up with our Bachelor at the end. Right.
Mm-hmm. Also, you asked about monetization,
which is the big question many people want to know.
So we broadcast through Geek and Sundry, so we don't see any of the ad revenue. They paid us a license fee. I think most web series are not sustainable in terms of monetization unless you have 800,000 subscribers, you're doing 3 videos a week that is easy and cheap to produce, and you have you ranting to the camera in your apartment. That kind of content, if you can get 400,000 views 3 times a week, you can make enough money to sustain a project or sustain a living. But YouTube pays $2,500 approximately for 1 million views or 1 million ad impressions. So you can do the math there, and you can see who's making a living on YouTube and who isn't. There's a rich get richer type phenomenon where if you have a lot of subscribers on YouTube, you tend to be above the golden ceiling, or the glass ceiling, and you can snowball from there. So that's YouTube.
And on YouTube, they also say that the formula for it start to being more sustainable is after 50 episodes, if you've got an audience
50
base.
videos?
Yeah, 50.
Yeah, so there's that way to do things, which a lot of people are, but there's also other players, other people that want to get into the game, and I'm sure you can talk about Yahoo. I don't know how they work, but there are brands also putting money into projects for web series. They're dipping their toes in the water right now. It's not a big thing that's
Branded
going on.
content, yeah.
But really, the advertisers have not moved over to the web in a big way, and not even in an organized way. And it has to do with the fact that the advertising industry is still regionally structured, and there's still borders, and there's no borders in the web. So that's especially a problem in Canada, where the advertising budgets are less than the U.S. But I don't know is there anything you want to say about Yahoo?
I think it's to be seen how exactly you monetize it. I don't think anybody's saying to anybody, you should get into web series to make a lot of money. I think it's a good way to produce what you want out there and to establish who you are as a writer or a producer. And I don't know, like our first season was very small, but then it came out and got a lot of attention, so we had brands coming in the second and third season, but I feel like that was all to get more money for the show, or to recoup the budget for the production. I'm not like rolling around in a pile of money because of that. But yeah,
prop money maybe.
There's a way to do it. But you know what? Like there's brands who are doing web series, like Ford did a web series. I mean, that's its own thing, obviously. But yeah.
Yeah, there's my first web series, Puronage, was early on in the web series days, so it was unique, and that's just on its own that there was a show on the internet, and we were very fortunate that the timing worked out that way, and we found that our show was very merchandisable. So we actually sold T-shirts for about 5 years and funded the show just on merchandise around the show. So there are exceptions to the ad revenue being the number one revenue. Some properties are merchandisable, and a lot of people try that route and jump on that we've found with all the web series that we've done that the fans will start asking for the merchandise.
Yeah.
And that's how you know. Don't go and buy a whole bunch of T-shirts, and then because you'll have just boxes of T-shirts in your house for a long time. They will ask for it. They'll be like, "Hey, I want that on a shirt," and you'll be like, "Okay."
And can you say what kind of license fee was put forth, or not
for
so much?
Space Janitors?
Yeah.
That's an NDA. I can't say.
Okay. I've been doing a lot of research. There are a lot of digital buyers that we've been talking to, and it ranges between 2 and 10K a minute based on who's in your cast and your star power. This is what I've been able to assess across the board. So I'm always curious to see what else is out there, right? Sometimes we don't know. That's one of the things about producers. We don't share our deals, so it's hard, and we can't. But it's also kind of good to know what the ranges are. I mean, when you go to Banff to market on a broadcast side, you kind of have an idea of what licenses are, but on the web it's still a little bit nebulous, so I'm always curious to see what's happening. Any other questions?
I have the mic here.
Perfect.
This follows a little bit from what the fellow was talking about earlier, but I'm removing any judgment from it. It struck me that both of your projects are referential. You're referencing The Bachelor, you're referencing Star Trek, and all of the other products that reference that classic. And they also have an ironic tone delivered via comedy. So I'm thinking, well, is that because there's very little opportunity to market a web series unless you can kind of tag on to something that's already well known? Aside from all the other questions of how do you do say 8-minute episodes and when do you upload them and how do you keep your audience involved, etc. Aside from that is how do you get the eyeballs in the first place, which I think is why this referential ironic approach, plus the obvious fact that a lot of your viewers will be below a certain age as a result of the format. How do you get those eyeballs to your web series in the first place?
Well, we had the support of Yahoo and putting it on their front page, and they get tons of eyeballs, so it would be right up at the top. But I think to speak to the referential part of it is we were helped out by people knowing The Bachelor, people hating The Bachelor. Both sort of sides of that, the love and the hate, helped us out because there was something for everybody. So yeah, I think the web is a natural place for that spoof and the short bursts of comedy. And then as far as eyeballs, I think social media helps, and just, I mean, it's hard, I guess, without the support of someone advertising for you to get that many eyeballs, but just make it as good as you possibly can. And
That's a great strategy. I think if someone hates Star Wars, they're not going to be watching our show. But I like how you have both sides. But yeah, so we you know, a lot of people, they make a web series and they just put it out there on YouTube. They make a new channel and they say, here it is, and then they put it on their Facebook and their friends watch and maybe share, and you know, that's sort of the basic way to try to grow an audience. But if it's not immensely shareable and it's not, you know, going to go viral right out of the gates, then, you know, you're going to have a problem. But, you know, what was that? Conversations with My 5-Year-Old web series?
2-year-old, yeah.
2-year-old?
Yeah, based here.
They did that exact strategy. It went viral, and it's now a huge online web series. It's shot in Vancouver, right?
Yep.
Yep.
They had a different hook.
Well, they had a great hook, yeah.
Ironic hook that is where it's sort of, I think, begun the web series format.
Yeah.
So that's a different format.
Yeah.
And I think every show ends up having its own format. I think that's one of the things that's really interesting. It's like when you're finding your audience and you're seeding it accordingly, and then you find people to champion it. Like, there's so many different ways that you can go. I mean, I was fascinated the other day when we had a conversation with Byte TV, and they were actually looking to have us do an original piece that would be on broadcast solely to drive traffic to the web, which is normally when you talk to broadcasters, they're like, so what are you going to do on the web to drive traffic to the broadcast? So the models are constantly changing, and I think every show is going to find its own. Unfortunately, we're at time, I hate to say, because there's so much more to talk about, but are you open to being out in the lobby and people taking questions there?
Yeah.
Great.
I'll be around.
Okay, so I just really like to thank you so much. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Geoff. Thank you. Quickly before we go, how can we find your web series? Where's the best place to go?
SpaceJanitors.com.
And for you?
well, I've heard it's geo-blocked, but it's if you go to burninglove.com, it'll redirect you to the Yahoo page.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much.